It's 3 years since the first volume of the Theatre Green Book was shared around UK theatres. In that time, we've come a long way. Theatres across the UK are working sustainably. Not net zero, not yet. This is a transition, not an overnight change. But theatre is on the journey. Through the Theatre Green Book, based on the knowledge and expertise of theatre makers themselves and underpinned by sustainability experts, we've given ourselves the guidance, the standards, the common language to make this transition together. What's more, in 3 years we've learned a lot about making productions more sustainably, about improving our operations and upgrading our buildings. We've learned not only from theatre makers in the UK, but from the theatre makers across the rest of Europe and beyond who have adopted the Theatre Green Book as a common language for sustainable theatre. That's why we've now made a new edition of the Theatre Green Book, to build on all that learning. This film shows how it works. First, some background. When the Theatre Green Book started to take shape, 4 things quickly became clear. Theatre will only succeed in its transition if we work together. There isn't time for each theatre and theatre maker to work this out for themselves. It's far easier if we give ourselves a common language for sustainable theatre, shared standards, and a shared approach which we can keep on improving together. Second, that approach needs to be methodical. So the Theatre Green Book divides this challenge into 3, making our productions more sustainable, making the rest of our operations sustainable, printing and digital, food and drink, travel and waste, and making our buildings fit for purpose in the climate emergency. Next, the Theatre Green Book's guidance is practical. Theatre makers aren't climate scientists, and we're busy. We need realistic guidance that tells each of us, whatever our role, what we need to do differently, and what we need others to do differently so the whole system can move forwards. Lastly, we need to measure our progress on the journey. Theatre isn't going to become sustainable overnight. It's a transition. The Theatre Green Book defines the steps that will take us to our goal. Basic means you've made significant progress in every area, from productions through to buildings. It doesn't mean you're fully sustainable, but you're on the way in every area, and you know what the path ahead looks like, even if it takes 4 or 5 years to get there. You'll develop through intermediate to reach advanced, and then you're a net zero theatre. How do you get started? With a commitment. We're calling that stage preliminary, a commitment to set up our organisations for the transition and to reach basic within a given time. There are companies, including large companies, across the UK and beyond, which have already reached basic, and some beyond. We know this journey is possible. Theatre makers are doing it now. Of course, everyone must decide for themselves how fast they can move. But using the Theatre Green Book's framework, it becomes possible, realistic, to believe that our whole sector can reach net zero by the end of 2030. That isn't empty rhetoric. Yes, there are some hurdles, finding money to upgrade our buildings, but we know how. The pages we're looking at come from the 2nd edition of the Theatre Green Book. Go to the Theatre Green Book website and you can open and download it, here, for free. And now let's take a closer look at how the Theatre Green Book is structured. The main volume explains how the journey works and talks everyone through the basic principles of sustainable theatre. It reminds us, too, that environmental sustainability is only part of the future we all want to build for theatre. Digging deeper, we divide the challenge into the 3 areas of productions, operations and buildings. Each has its own resources section on the Theatre Green Book website. Click on the Resources button, here, and by the way, you'll find links inside the Theatre Green Book text as well, and you'll find everything else you need. For each area, there's an Excel-based support tool, a production calculator to measure your shows, an operations tracker for the 101 things you need to keep track of in a sustainable operation, a building survey tool to start planning to make your building more sustainable. These tools were made by practical theatre makers for their own use. They're in Excel so you can develop them to suit your own practice. We've made a tutorial film on each, which you'll find in each resources area. The support tools also include carbon calculators. The most important thing is to track what you're actually doing differently and how quickly you're switching to a circular economy. In other words, how much you reuse and recycle. But the tools will now help you measure how quickly your most significant carbon emissions are falling as well. In each resources area, you'll also find more guidance, going into the detail on everything from production lighting to audience travel and air source heat pumps. And finally, again, in each area, you'll find case studies from working theatres on every aspect of sustainable theatre, along with toolkits to help with the how-to of making your practice sustainable. To keep producing and updating all these resources, we rely on you. The Theatre Green Book is a collective initiative. As you build your own expertise, we all need to share our knowledge and support others as they begin their own journey. Anyone, freelancer or theatre, can connect to the Theatre Green Book initiative just by showing your support on the website. We'll keep you updated on events, news and updates, and you'll be able to see, too, who else is supporting the Theatre Green Book initiative. Theatres don't exist in a vacuum. We're connected to each other, to our freelancers and artists, to our partners, funders and audiences. If we want to achieve this transition, it's important we share our progress openly. So, the second edition of the Theatre Green Book helps theatres self-certify where they've got to. No one's going to police this, but if you're sure you've reached basic or intermediate, then download the certificate, sign and submit it, and you can use a Theatre Green Book logo to go public about your progress. A basic theatre has meaningfully changed how it makes productions. It's managing every aspect of its operations to become more sustainable. It's got a plan for upgrading its building, if it has one, and has put the first steps in hand. That's something worth talking about, and it's worth sharing with audiences, because we know from research how desperately audiences want us to make this journey. If you register your theatre, which costs nothing, you'll find the certificates you need in the website's General Resources area, here. Upload your certificates to receive Theatre Green Book logos for your website and publicity material. That's it. The second edition of the Theatre Green Book gives you everything you need to achieve the transition, a framework for planning it, best practice guidance in every area, standards to map out the journey, tools to measure progress. All this reflects the experience and expertise of practical theatre makers and is based on a solid foundation of climate methodology. Theatre will be sustainable. We know what we have to do. We have the tools. We have the momentum. Most of all, we have the networks. No one has to do this by themselves. By sharing our expertise, we know the whole sector can move forwards where one theatre, one artist would struggle. Today, those networks have spread across Europe and beyond. The Theatre Green Book has become a network of networks, where theatre communities in different countries adapt the guidance to suit their own practice and share their own expertise with the rest of us. New translations and adaptations are appearing all the time. The European Theatre Convention, Europe's biggest theatre grouping, has developed a version to serve its members across 31 countries. The European Commission has endorsed it as a pathway for sustainable theatre. Theatre Green Books are being launched locally in Taiwan, Australia, and the Arabic-speaking theatre world. This really is a collaboration across the whole of theatre. Our sector has the creativity, courage, and integrity to make theatre without harming the planet we live on. If theatre can change, then the whole of culture can change. If culture can change, then the transition we all face suddenly seems less frightening. Please help. Please make case studies of your work so others can learn from your experience. We'll share them on the Theatre Green Book website. Please be ready to support other theatre makers peer-to-peer and give freelancers and contractors the help they need. Please sign up on our website as a supporter. That way, the whole of theatre can make the journey to sustainability together.